Welcome everyone to Daf Yomi 1 week at a time, Masechet Horayot. This is our first class of this Masechet, and there will only be one more class to this Masechet. This Masechet has 14 pages, 9 of which we're going to do today. Oh, maybe I'll save one. Maybe we'll do 8 today. And then we'll do 9 for next week. These dapim are actually very long. It's a very short masachet, but each page is very long, as you will see shortly. So I think today I would like to start with a review or an introduction, to this masachet. Horayot comes from the word hora'ah, which means teaching. And this Masechet is about the court that makes an erroneous ruling, meaning they say that something is permitted, but really it is forbidden. And then the people follow that erroneous ruling, and we're going to see who is liable for that mistake. This Masechet focuses on the sacrifice that is brought for these various rulings, which is why the slide has pictures of an ox, a bull, and a ram or a goat. It's not clear to me what that is, but maybe male goat. Okay, I definitely could not be the Kohen HaGadol. I cannot recognize the animals, but we are going to discuss the different animals that are brought as the sacrifice. So if you remember, we have learned in the past that if an individual does a sin by accident, bishogeg, so for many of those sins, they will bring what's called a fixed sin offering, a korban chatat, which is either a female goat or sheep. Another type of sacrifice is called a varied sin offering. In Hebrew, it's called a korban ole v'yored, right? Literally means it goes up and down, what we would call sliding scale, right? Depending on the person's financial stability, right? The more money you have, the bigger the animal you bring. And this is only certain types of sins. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. If a person transgresses and does idolatry, again, by accident, he brings a goat. And if there is a doubt as to if the person sinned or not, they bring what's called an asham talui. Talui literally means like hanging. The idea is that you're not sure if you did something wrong, therefore you bring this type of sacrifice. We are going to also speak about, or mostly speak about, communal sins. So the first one that we're going to talk about, and what I alluded to in the beginning, in Hebrew it's called a par he'elem davar, which literally means a par is an ox or a bull that there was again he'elem davar literally means you forgot something. But it is what I mentioned in the beginning, where the court makes a wrong ruling, right? They forgot the law, and therefore the people, and we're going to see it has to be the majority of the nation. If they transgress based on this ruling, they do not, well, we'll see, it's a machloket, but one opinion is the individual person does not bring a sin offering. Rather, it's the court that is going to bring this bull. And it's unique because its blood is sprinkled on the inside of the temple, meaning in the Kodesh, as opposed to on the outer altar, on the Mizbeach, and it is not eaten by the Kohanim. It is actually burnt outside of the temple. Two more of this similar category is the ox, the par of the Kohen Mashiach, which means, even though the Gemara keeps using the word Mashiach, it does not mean the Messiah. It means the high priest. The high priest was anointed. That's the word, right? Mashuach, from the word anointed. So this is the high priest, the Kohen HaGadol. If he makes an erroneous ruling for himself, and then he acts upon it, he also brings a bull. And the last one is the seir, the goat of the Nasi. Nasi literally means president. Like nowadays, Nasi means a president or a leader. Here it means the king. The king of the nation. If he transgresses, he brings a male goat as opposed to a female goat. Okay, another, just one more thing as an introduction. If you look at the page of the Gemara in this Masechet, you'll actually notice that Rashi is on both sides. If you remember, in general, it's usually Rashi is on one side, Tosfot is on the other. In this Masechet, Rashi is much more, is lengthier. Therefore, some people say maybe it's not really Rashi, and Tosfot is actually on the bottom. So that is just a little bit about the Masechet. Okay, let's jump in. As I said, the dapim are very long, so I will try to summarize. Okay, daf number 2. Again, as we all know, we start on daf 2. The Mishnah says that a court ruled that something is permitted to do, even though really it is forbidden. So if the individual, right, the individual does the action, so the individual is exempt from bringing a sin offering, a korban chatat, because, as we said, it wasn't their fault. It was based on the ruling of the court. If one of the members of the court knew that they were making a mistake, if a person sinned, or right, if anybody acted on it, so if they rely on their self, so then that person brings their own korban chatat. If they relied on the court, so then they are exempt. If he's the only one who did it, so then again, then the court would be exempt from bringing their ox. So now the Gemara explains that again, the court is only liable if they rule falsely, right? They make a mistake and they say this is what you should do, and then the people act on it. That is the sacrifice that we are talking about, right? But if you, right, if let's say they say this, the example that's brought in the Gemara is chelev, not to be confused with chalav, right? Chalav is milk. Chelev is the fat of an animal. We will learn in the next Masechet and in a few more Masechtot that chelev, there are some fats of the animal that are permitted to eat, but some are forbidden. So let's say they say, right, this fat is okay, and then a person had that one and another one, and it got mixed up. That's not the case that we are talking about. It has to be that the person acted, right, consciously, and did it as a knowing act, right? So the example that I think we can relate to is, right, let's say an organization says this food is kosher, right? And then you go out and you eat all that food, and then they say, oh, no, we made a mistake, it's not kosher, right? That's the idea. The point is here that if the majority of the nation, right, went out and bought this food and ate it, it's the court that needs to bring the sacrifice and not the individual person. Okay, Now, as I said, it needs to be that the majority of the nation sins, right, or acts on this ruling. So now the Gemara says, what if the nation is 50-50 and one person is the tipping point? And right, he wouldn't, so then, and again, he, let's say, makes a mistake and doesn't eat it on purpose, but does it as a like mistakenly. So then he would not tip the scales because again, he didn't act with full consciousness or awareness of what he was doing. Okay, if let's say there's a student who was in the court when they ruled and he knew that they were wrong, so it has to be someone who would have sat on, right, as a judge, but this time he wasn't a judge. If he did have that knowledge, so then if he acted on it, so then he brings his own sacrifice, meaning because he had this knowledge that they made a mistake. Okay, let's say the person doesn't listen to the court, right? In general, right? They're like, oh, I don't follow the OU. I only follow whatever, something else, right? So they say, I don't follow this court. So then if he eats something that they said was okay, he can't be like, oh, wait, they told me it was okay, right? Because that in general, he does not follow that court, right? He can't say that he was relying on their ruling if he wouldn't follow them in general. And therefore, he has to bring a personal korban chatat based on his action. Now, let's say a person did this act, right, ate this food, because they didn't realize, right, again, generally the way it works is the court makes the wrong ruling, people act. At some point, the court realizes that they made a mistake and they issue right, oh, I'm so sorry, but really you can't eat Oreos, right? They issue a ruling. Now, let's say the person didn't hear the retraction, right? So if the person did the sin, right, the act, because they didn't realize that the court retracted their ruling, they are still, the individual is exempt from bringing their own sacrifice because when they did the act, they were relying on the court. Okay. Now, one of the Chachamim, right, one opinion is that if the individual does the act based on the ruling, so then the court brings the ox, but the individual also brings their own personal korban chatat, right? So one opinion is that it's both communal and individual. Let's say only a minority of the Jewish people did this act, so then they each bring a private chatat because, again, the court is not going to bring their sacrifice. Let's say all of the Jewish people, right, all of Bnei Israel did this sin by accident, excuse me, but it was not based on the ruling of the court, so then they each bring their own personal sacrifice, right? So again, it's important to recognize the competing values, right? If I did something wrong, I should bring a korban chatat, a sin offering, or no, I did it because I thought it was right. Therefore, right, the ones who ruled, right, who told me that it was okay, they have the responsibility to bring the sacrifice and not me, right? That's basically this Masechet is really speaking about those values of the individual versus the community. Okay, Daf 3 tells us that Rabbi Meir says if a person acted, right, again, erroneously based on the court, so then that person is exempt. As we said, Chachamim say that he is liable, right? And this is based on, right, there needs to be a ma'aseh, there needs to be an action by the people, and there needs to be a hora'ah, right? That's our word, right? There needs to be a ruling by the court, right? Both of those things have to exist in order for the court to have to bring this sacrifice. Okay, right. So again, another opinion is Rabbi Shimon. Right, we saw Rabbi Meir, we saw the sages. Rabbi Shimon says, even when the court brings their sacrifice, so the individual also brings it, and right, and Rabbi Yehuda says that a tribe, right, a shevet, right, if they do the action, so then they're called, we're going to see the word kahal, right? Kahal means the congregation, right? The group. So kahal, right, or another word is tzibur, right? Again, the community. So how do you define community? So far we said the majority of the Jewish people. Now we have an opinion that it's one shevet, one tribe, or maybe we need 6 tribes, and they have to be the majority of the nation, meaning they have to be also like number-wise majority, or 7 tribes, right? And they're not the majority. Again, just to remind ourselves, right? We have 12 tribes of Israel, even though we're going to talk in a minute, maybe 13. And so therefore we need either 6 and more people, or 7 tribes, and you don't need majority in terms of number of people. Okay. And it has to be the majority of Jews living in Israel. It does not count the people who are living outside of Israel. Apologies to all of you who are outside of Israel. But when we're speaking about community, here it's talking about the court in Israel ruling for the people who are in Israel. Those are the people that are in this idea. Let's say at the time of the sin, right, a majority of the people were the ones who sinned, but then their numbers reduced, right? Let's say people moved out of Israel or they died. What do we do? So one opinion is they are liable. It's based on the time of the sin, not the time that you have to bring the sacrifice. But if it's a minority of the people when they did the sin, but now they increased in number, so do we go according to when we, right, figured it out that they did the sin, or when they actually did the sin? So Rabbi Shimon says you actually need both of those time periods to be the majority. And if you don't have both, you do not bring the ox. Okay, if the court ruled that, again, this piece of fat is okay, and a minority of people acted, and then the court said, wait, no, we made a mistake. And then, it's not clear to me why, and then they again rule that this piece of chalev is okay. And so now, do we say that it, right, they connect and therefore minority and minority gives you majority? Or, right, what if it's different types of fats? Or what if it's about different types of forbidden things? And as you see where we're going, right, the end of this is teku, right? We're not sure exactly when they would be liable. What if it's 2 separate courts, right? Again, right, the one court made a ruling and then they died, and then a new court comes and makes the same ruling, right? Again, is it seen as that court and therefore it combines, or no? And again, teku. Next, the par he'elim davar, again, this ox is only going to be brought if all the judges ruled erroneously, right? The verse says, kol adat, right? Everyone, meaning it has to be a unanimous vote. Yeah, and I don't know why that sounded weird to me. Unanimous. So it has to be unanimous vote. If not, then, and it's just a majority, then it doesn't count, and they would not bring this sacrifice. Okay, now let's say one judge stands up and says, you guys are wrong. So then again, they are exempt because not everybody agrees. But let's say he was quiet and he didn't say anything. So then they are liable. From here, the Gemara actually tells us it's connected, but like a side note that the courts should not decree something for the nation unless they know that they can handle it. This is an important rule that we see throughout the Talmud, that if you feel that this is too difficult for the people to abide by, you have to be very careful how you determine the law. Okay, next Mishnah at the bottom of Daf 3. The court ruled, again, they made a mistake. Then they realized that they made a mistake, so they retract it. And then somebody acts on the original ruling. Now, they already retracted it. So Rabbi Shimon says that person is exempt from his personal sacrifice. Rabbi Elazar says, no, I'm not sure, because did he know? Did he not know? Right? So then we say, if he was home when he did this, so then we're not sure. But if he was abroad, so then he's exempt, because the assumption is, right, it wasn't on Twitter that it was retracted, and therefore he is exempt because he didn't know that they retracted their ruling. If they rule, okay, and now another aspect of this idea is that the court cannot nullify or rule against an entire law, right? They can't say there's no such thing as a nida, there's no such thing as Shabbat, or there's no such thing as idolatry. That does not work. But it has to be a partial ruling, meaning there is nida, but in this case, right, in this aspect, that would be permitted, even though really it is forbidden. Okay, so now the Gemara explains that, again, the first case was that the person acted on the original ruling even after they retracted that ruling. So the Gemara explains, right, as long as he acted based on the original ruling, he is exempt. But if he knew about the ruling, so then he would not be exempt. Okay, daf number 4. The money for this ox, this par he'elem davar, comes from a new collection. That's one opinion. Or it comes from what's called trumat halishka, right? The money that was already gathered, collected with machatzit shekel, with the shekel, the half shekel that was collected. Okay. One opinion is that a person is still liable to bring an ashama talui. Remember, we said that if there's a doubt, if you sinned or not, you would bring this offering if he didn't listen to the ruling and the retraction of the court. Okay, 1 second. Okay. We said that the person, if the person was home, then they should have heard the retraction, therefore they're liable. The Gemara says, but if they're actually at home, but they're packing to go on a journey, so then you would be exempt, because, right, as we know, when we're packing for a trip, it's as if half of you already left, right? So you're already thinking about all the things you have to do. So one opinion is you'd be exempt. Another opinion is no, you're still at home. You should have known. Okay, we said that the court needs to rule about, right, a partial aspect of a mitzvah, right? This comes from the verse says, v'ne'elam, right? V'ne'elam davar, right? Something was, right, missing or, right, escaped them, right? What does that mean? That, right, mi davar, right? Like one part of the davar, not the whole davar, but a part of the davar. Okay, another idea is that the court is only liable for this sacrifice for things that the tzdukim, the Sadducees, do not follow, meaning they only followed things that were written in the Torah. Therefore, if it's something that's so clear in the Torah, right, you cannot eat a rabbit, right? So if the court comes out and says you can eat a rabbit, that's no, that doesn't work, right? Meaning it's so clear that that's something you can't do, that if you do listen to them, again, you can discuss why they would say that, but let's say, right, but you should know better, and therefore you would still be liable if you acted on that ruling. Okay. Right, also about idolatry, right? It could be about like bowing down, but if that's not the way a normal idol, that idol is served, so then it would count as part of this category. Right, let's say the court says you can plow on Shabbat, right? Is this seen as a partial ruling or not? Now, it is negating an entire milacha, right? An entire action that we know is forbidden, or, right, but it's not negating all of Shabbat, and therefore it is seen as a partial ruling. Okay, next Mishnah. The court rules incorrectly, and then one judge says, right, you guys are wrong. What did you do? So if it's a regular court and the most important judge, right, so the head judge isn't there, so then you can't have this concept of par ha'elem davar, because the most important person wasn't there. We can call it the smartest person wasn't there, therefore it doesn't count. Or if one of the judges is like a questionable judge, so then it's seen as not a complete court, therefore they would not bring this sacrifice. And right, everyone who's sitting at the judge's table it needs to be fit to judge, to rule. The Gemara explains that right, we learn this from Moshe, who appointed 71 judges. They needed to be like Moshe in the sense that they were able to teach or to rule, and therefore we learn the same thing for court as well. Okay, next Mishnah, the court, makes a mistake. People acted on it by accident. That is when they bring the par ha'elem davar. If the court ruled on purpose, and then the people acted by accident, meaning they, right, again, like we said, the court knew something was wrong and they said that it was okay. And then the people said, oh, okay, I guess it's okay now. So then each person needs to bring an individual sin offering because that is not a fitting ruling for the court. Now, if the court ruled by accident, but the people did the action on purpose, meaning they knew it was wrong and they did it anyway, so the people don't bring a sin offering because you don't bring a sin offering if you do something on purpose, and the court doesn't bring a sin offering because the people didn't listen to them. They weren't doing it because of what they said. Okay, next Mishnah, the court ruled and the entire nation or the majority of it does an action. As we said, the court brings a par, right, an ox. If it's about idolatry, so then the court brings a par and a goat. This is according to Rabbi Meir. Okay, so according to Rabbi Meir, the court has all the responsibility. The individual has no responsibility. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda says, no, 12 tribes bring 12, right? Each tribe brings an ox. And if it's for idolatry, 12 ox, 12 goats. Okay, so that's Rabbi Yehuda. Daf number 5, Rabbi Shimon says they actually bring 13, meaning each tribe brings one, and then the court also brings one, right? So again, this idea of communal responsibility. So we have individual, we have the tribe, and we have the court. So we see how everyone has different responsibilities. Okay, so as we said, the court rules, 7 tribes act upon it, or a majority of the people act on it. So then the court will bring the par. And if it's avodah zarah, if it's idolatry, they'll bring the par and a goat. Rabbi Yehuda says if they bring 7 parim, right, each tribe that acted is going to bring the ox, and the other tribes also need to bring an ox, right? Rabbi Yehuda says they get pulled into it, right? What we would call, right, communal responsibility. Rabbi Shimon says 8 ox, right? 7 for the tribes that did it, plus for the court. Again, if the court of one tribe ruled and that tribe acted, so then that court needs to bring the power. Or maybe they're exempt, and you only bring a par if it comes from the Sanhedrin, right? The Supreme Court. So now the Gemara explains, right? The court made a mistake but forgot what the ruling was. You do not bring the ox, but right again because they need to know what their mistake was. Now again, we said from the word kahal, right? The congregation. The congregation is liable, and each tribe, right, needs to bring their sacrifices. Again, as we said, one opinion is that all the other tribes get pulled in as well because of communal responsibility. Another opinion is that the court also brings an ox, and each tribe also does, or if the court brings the ox, then the tribes do not bring the ox, right? That's Rabbi Meir. So you see there are a lot of different opinions as to who brings what. Okay. So, and then the Gemara shows the verses that were used to teach that the court needs to rule and the nation needs to act. Again, so now the question is, let's say the Sanhedrin, right, the Supreme Court makes a ruling and one tribe acts, right? Does that pull everybody else in, or only if 7 tribes act, does that pull in everybody, right? That is the question. Again, depending on each opinion, the answer is yes or no. Okay. Okay, again, as we said, right, if the court rules, so then the rest of the nation is exempt. And if the Sanhedrin rules, then the rest of the nation is going to be liable, depending on who did what action, right? So the Gemara tells us that one tribe is called a congregation, right? We see it in the time of Yehoshaphat. It's called, right, the tribe of Yehuda is called a kahal. The same thing with God tells Yaakov that he's going to have another kahal, and they say this is about Binyamin. Daf 6 talks about when they rebuilt the temple. So the verse says that they brought many sacrifices and that they weren't eaten. And here we're trying to learn how many sacrifices were brought. So in the time, so it says that, again, this is what's called the Shivat Zion, the return to Zion. they bring these sacrifices, and they are sin offerings. And the Gemara says that they are atoning for the idolatry that was done in the time of Tzidkiyahu, which was before that. And they bring 12 ox. So it shows that, right, one for each tribe. Or maybe no, right? Another opinion could be they sinned 12 times. That's why they brought 12 oxen. But the Gemara says, wait a minute. Now, and we're going to see this in a minute. The korban chatat, the sin offering, its owners need to be alive in order to sacrifice it. Now, if this is something that happened 70 years beforehand, the assumption is that everybody who sinned is already dead. So the Gemara says, no, and this is, I think, first of all, just philosophically, I think it's a beautiful idea, but the Gemara says that a kahal, a congregation, can never die, meaning even if the people are no longer there, that congregation always exists. And therefore, if the Jewish people sinned with idolatry in the time of Tzidkiyahu, then the Jewish people in Shivat Zion, 70 years later, can bring that sacrifice for them, which I think is just a beautiful idea of, right, the nation is always alive, right? Individuals might not be there, but the nation is always there, right? And therefore, they could bring that sacrifice. Another opinion is no, actually, some people were still alive. If you remember, if you've ever learned the Tanakh in this time period, it says that when they dedicated the second temple, you couldn't hear what was going on because there was so much crying. Who was crying? The people who had seen the original temple were crying at the second temple, because at that time when it was built, it was this little teeny tiny building. And they were like, oh, like, I can't believe that this is the new temple. So that actually shows that the people were still alive who had seen the original temple. Okay, let's say, let's say if one of the judges dies, then you do not, the court does not bring this sacrifice. This is according to Rabbi Meir. It's like a sin offering whose owner died. Again, the court is different than all of Am Yisrael. But if, again, like we said, the nation, the tzibur, cannot die, but the court, right, a judge can. Any tribe that has land in Israel is called a kahal, a congregation. Now, what's the issue? Levi does not have any land, right? They don't own any land, and therefore they are not counted. If that's the case, that they're not counted, wait a minute, we only have 11 tribes. The Gemara says, no, we have Ephraim and Menashe, and they are, they make up, right, tribe 11 and 12. Since I mentioned the sin offering, the korban chatat, the Gemara tells us, and we'll learn it also in the next Masechet, that there are 5 sin offerings, that these 5 different cases where the animal is going to be killed and not brought as a sacrifice. Again, a sin offering, a korban chatat, is brought because a person sins. So there are specific rules about this, meaning if that animal has a baby, that baby or that offspring is not brought as a korban chatat, but it has sanctity, and it can't be, for your barbecue. Therefore, it has to die. Another is called tmura. Tmura is, and this is a good introduction for us for the next Masechet, which is all about sacrifices. Tmura is when you have an animal that's supposed to be a sacrifice, and then you say, you know what? I don't want to give this sheep. I want to give this sheep. You can make this second sheep holy, sanctified, but the original sheep does not lose its sanctity. So that new animal is called a tmura, right, like a substitute, and it is not the original. The original gets sacrificed. The second one needs to get killed because it's not a regular animal and it's not a sacrifice. The next one is what we mentioned before. If the owner, the person who sinned, died, then you cannot bring his sin offering. And if, let's say, the person, set aside this animal as a sin offering, and then it got lost. So then they're like, oh, wait, I need a new animal. So they buy a new animal. So again, it's a machloket, right? And let's say they use this second animal and they sacrifice it. So that first animal, you don't need it anymore to be a korban chatat, but you can't, again, use it for your barbecue. And the last one is if the animal became too old, right? We will learn in the next Masechet that a korban chatat has to be a certain age, and if it gets too old, it cannot be a korban chatat anymore. And the Gemara explains that all of these, right, these 5 categories do not apply to a communal sacrifice, right? The community cannot make a tmura, right? A substitution. A community does not die, right? And therefore, these things do not apply to communal sacrifices. That is the end of the first chapter. Next chapter, this chapter, that was about the court, right? Again, par he'elem davar, the court erroneous ruling. This chapter is going to be about the Kohen HaGadol. Okay, so now the Mishnah tells us if the Kohen HaGadol, again, the high priest, decides that something is permitted, he decides for himself. It's not like he takes out an ad in the paper. He decides for himself, right? He's presumably very smart. He decides for himself, and then he acts. So he brings an ox, right? He brings a par. Again, he has to do it by accident, not on purpose, but he brings a par, which is very unique because he's an individual. He's not a community. So that is interesting. It's all interesting, but that is unique. If he ruled by accident but acted on purpose or the opposite, so then he does not bring this sacrifice, right? Because he is like the court. Again, the court has to rule by accident. The people have to do it by accident. The same thing for him. Okay, so now the Gemara says it has to be, again, that he rules about something. He doesn't remember why he made that ruling, and that is what makes it shogeg, right? Inadvertent. Daf 7 of the verse connects the Kohen Gadol to the nation, right? And therefore, and he is singled out like the nation. The next category is going to be the Nasi. The Nasi is also singled out, but the Nasi brings a goat. The Kohen Gadol brings an ox, right? So the Kohen Gadol is going to be closer to the nation, the tzibur, as opposed to the Nasi, to the king. And here the Gemara compares, right, all these 3 to see who is most like the other. And the Gemara concludes that that the Kohen Gadol is more like the nation and less like the king. Okay, the Mishnah says that he has to make his own ruling and he acts upon it. If he was part of a court and then he acted with the people, so then he's included in the court's sacrifice. He doesn't bring his own sacrifice. And again, as we said, he needs to rule on a part of a mitzvah, not on an entire mitzvah, just like the court. So now the Gemara says that he, just like the king, if he acts with the nation, he's included with the nation. But the Gemara says maybe there's a difference because the king is part of the nation on Yom Kippur, whereas the Kohen Gadol is not part of the nation on Yom Kippur. Okay. Then the Gemara talks about the Kohen Gadol making a ruling and the court making a ruling. So as long as they're making rulings about different things, even if they're in the same place, so then they're seen as two separate entities. Okay, next Mishnah. The court is only liable if they ruled and the people acted. So too with the Kohen Gadol, and the same is with idolatry. Now again, it sounds maybe repetitive, but we're adding different aspects with each Mishnah. So now the Gemara says that again, even though idolatry is separate, it's linked to the par ha'elem davar that we mentioned before. Again, the erroneous ruling by the court, and therefore you need a bad ruling, like the wrong ruling, and an action. Okay. The Gemara, okay, let's go to Daf 8. That the court is only liable for the par, for the ox, if the punishment for the sin, if you did it on purpose, is karet, right? Again, being completely cut off from the nation. And if you do it by accident, you'd bring a korban chatat, a sin offering. The same thing for the Kohen Gadol and for idolatry, right? And this is learned from linking the sins of forbidden relations and the Kohen Gadol, who is compared to the nation. Therefore, it is all parallel, right? And the Gemara says that, right? It's including the individual who sins, the king, and the high priest, and it also teaches about the community, right? These are all the different categories. Okay, and the Gemara talks about when we received the Torah. So the Jewish people heard the first two commandments straight from God. Therefore, right, and what are the first two commandments, right? I am your God, and you can't have idols, so that's idolatry. Therefore, idolatry is referred to the commandment that God told the Jewish people. Now, obviously, God told the Jewish people all of the commandments, but here the Gemara is saying that idolatry is specifically a commandment that the Jewish people heard directly from God. It's also called the first commandment. It's not the first commandment that we've ever gotten, but it is the first commandment of the 10 commandments, even though it's not exactly, because the first commandment is I'm your God, but the idea is I'm your God, you can't worship other gods. So that is the Gemara. Okay, two more Mishnahs. The next Mishnah, the court is not liable for a mitzvah that is done if they rule on a mitzvah that has to do with the temple, right? It has to be something that's not has to do with the temple, right? And a person isn't liable for the doubt of a mitzvah that has to do with the temple, right? You do not bring what's called, remember, the asham talui. This is a sacrifice of doubt. You do not bring that for things that have to do with the temple. The court is liable for rulings about nida, and you bring an asham talui for issues of nida. And why are they bringing up nida? It's not specifically but it's basically because Nida has a positive commandment that you have to separate when a woman is in Nida, and it has a negative commandment, you're not allowed to have relations when a woman is in Nida, right, when she's menstruating. So now the Gemara says, you only bring an asham talui, again, that's the one for the doubt, for things that you would normally bring, you'd normally bring a sin offering, a chatat kavua, a regular sin offering. But a sin that you'd normally bring a variable sin offering, an olev yored, if there's a doubt, you do not bring the asham talui. Okay, last Mishnah for today. If the court isn't liable, the court isn't liable to bring the ox if they ruled falsely about false oaths or impurity that has to do with the temple. These are things that you would bring an asham talui for, as we mentioned, and because it's variable and not fixed, if the court ruled about these things, they would not bring their communal sacrifice. So too, the king, or maybe the king is liable for these things, except for, again, as we said, there are three mitzvot that you'd bring an asham talui. One of them is, in Hebrew, it's called shmi'at kol, which means that the court makes you swear that you have, right? The court thinks that a person has a testimony for a case, and the person says, no, what are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about. And they swear falsely. That's called shmi'at kol. And for this, if this has nothing to do with the king, because we'll see next week, but also now, the king cannot be forced to bring testimony, and therefore he would never be liable for this type of sacrifice. Okay, I think we're going to stop here, and we will save the next daf for next week, because we'll have 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, that's good. I'm going to open it up to questions and comments in a minute, but I did want to let you know that this coming Sunday night, we are having a special shiur podcast discussion, because we actually are going to be finishing this Masechet on, I think we finish it on Tuesday. And when we finish Horayot, it is the last Masechet of Seder Nizikin, which started with Baba Kama a while ago. I don't remember exactly when, but is it 2 years? I don't know, 1.5 years. It's been a while. Because we're finishing all of Seder Nizikin, we are going to have a conversation with the people who teach Daf Yomi, maybe think about some lessons that we can learn, maybe do some sort of a review. So that's going to be Sunday night. I think it's 9:30 Israel time, but I imagine that there will be an email about that. And otherwise, we will meet next week at our regular time. Okay, questions, comments. I kind of spoke really fast, but hopefully you got it. It is a complicated Masechet, short but complicated. So I hope I did it justice. That's what I have to say.
We did get an email. I got an email already about Sunday.
Okay, great. Okay, comments, questions.
It is a lot. Each page is so much, and it's beyond. You've left a lot on your plate for next week. So, but don't feel any pressure, So we understand. You want to take it longer, you can.
I just saw the type, the font, what became smaller for it all to be fit on one document.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's a long Masechet, and it's a short Masechet, but long pages. So Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll be able to summarize that next week. Yes.
The Kohen Gadol, did he have property of his own, like the animals, that he could sacrifice?
It's an excellent question. He does not have land because the Kohanim, like the Leviim, right, do not have land. But we will see next week. He was generally very rich, so he does have money. So because he has money, he can buy animals, and therefore he can bring sacrifices. Yes, so he is generally wealthy. If he is not wealthy, then the other Kohanim give him money. But we'll see that next week. Yes.
And wasn't it true that, if I remember correctly, wasn't the half pan at Minka, the half pan had to come out of his own personal accounts, and he was responsible to bring that. So he did have some money.
Exactly. So the Kohen Gadol brings a daily sacrifice, a mincha offering, a grain offering daily, and that has to come from his own money. Correct. So we will mention that next week, and then we will learn more about that in the upcoming Masechets as well.
I think it was very interesting that you said, as far as the Nasi, the king can't testify.
Yes.
In light of current events.
The king cannot be brought to court either as a defendant or as a prosecutor. It is interesting. Yes.
In lieu of current events.
No political statements here.
Oh no, I just said current events. I didn't say.
Yes. Okay, excellent. So wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom. Be'ezrat Hashem, I will see you, if you can, Sunday night, and if not, on Wednesday night. So have a Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Be safe.